The hall was full of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. 247 alien species sat in the Grand Council chamber. Their voices were loud, their robes were bright, and their eyes were sharp. They had built starships, controlled planets, and ruled entire solar systems. And they all agreed on one thing: humans were nothing special. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Union was the most important room in the known universe. It was a massive circular hall, carved from a hollowed-out asteroid, floating silently in deep space. The walls glowed with soft blue light. Giant screens showed maps of thousands of star systems. Every seat was filled. Every species had a voice here. Every species, except the newest members, the humans. Commander Marcus Cole stood near the back of the human delegation. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered with short dark hair going gray at the sides. His uniform was plain, dark navy blue, no decorations, no shiny medals. Other alien ambassadors wore robes covered in gold and jewels. Marcus wore nothing like that. He did not need to. The humans had only been part of the Galactic Union for 6 months. 6 months was nothing. Most species had been members for thousands of years, so when the humans walked in, the whispers started immediately. Some aliens laughed quietly behind their hands. Others just stared with cold, unimpressed eyes. The meeting was about trade routes and border agreements. Normal, boring stuff. But then Ambassador Drakakal stood up, and nothing was boring anymore. Drakakal was the ambassador of the Zalorian Empire. The Zalorians were tall, reptilian creatures with green-gray scales and yellow eyes. They were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy, and Drakakal was their most arrogant representative. He rose slowly from his seat, straightening his long silver robe. He looked around the room with a wide smile that showed too many teeth. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Union," he said, his voice deep and smooth, "I wish to raise a concern." The room went quiet. When Drakakal spoke, everyone listened. "It has come to my attention," he continued, "that the human species has been granted a full seat at this council." He paused for effect. "I find this troubling. Humans are a primitive species. They have barely left their own solar system. They have no ancient history, no great empire, no legendary battles." He turned and looked directly at the human section. "What exactly do they bring to this council?" He turned his yellow eyes to Marcus Cole. "You," Drakakal said, pointing a long claw directly at him. "You are their military commander, yes?" Marcus nodded once. "Then tell me, Commander," Drakakal said, "how many enemies have you personally killed in battle?" The room went completely silent. Then the laughter started. It began with the Zalorian delegation, a low hissing sound that was their version of a laugh. Then the Brakari species joined in with their clicking noises. Then the Vothian ambassadors chuckled in their deep, rumbling way. Soon, almost the entire chamber was laughing. Because the question was meant to be a joke, everyone understood that. They expected the human to say a small number, maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe even 100 if they were being generous. Marcus Cole did not react to the laughter. He did not look embarrassed, he did not look angry. He just stood there completely calm and waited for the noise to die down. "Do you want the confirmed number?" he said, "or the estimated number?" The laughter stopped. Completely. Instantly. Drakakal blinked his yellow eyes. "Confirmed," he said, his voice slightly quieter than before. Marcus nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver datapad. He looked at it for only a second and he said a number. 3 ambassadors stood up immediately and walked out without saying a word. One Brakari delegate made a sound their species only made in extreme fear. The old Cathoran ambassador who had been laughing 60 seconds ago sat completely still, his face pale. And Ambassador Drakakal sat down very slowly. And he never made direct eye contact with Marcus Cole again. Not for the rest of that meeting. Not ever. "Was that number accurate?" Director Ewan whispered. Marcus put the datapad back in his pocket. "That was just the confirmed number," he said quietly. "The estimated number is higher." The Grand Council meeting continued for another 3 hours that day. But no one asked the humans any more joke questions. No one laughed at them, because the galaxy had just learned something important. The humans were not primitive. The humans were not weak. They were the species that had a confirmed number, and an estimated number that was even higher. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 247 alien species, the most powerful beings in the known galaxy, sat in complete silence, and all of them were staring at one human, a human who had just said a number that no one in that room was ready for. Ambassador Dracocal was still sitting down. His silver robe was perfectly neat. His posture was straight. But something in his eyes had changed. The confidence was gone. In its place was something much quieter, something that looked a lot like fear. Should we explain the number? Director Yuan whispered. They will ask, Marcus said quietly. Let them ask. And they did ask. The High Speaker of the Council finally broke the silence. Commander Cole, the Council requests clarification. That number, before we enter it into the official record, we need to understand it. What would you like to know? Marcus asked. How is that number possible for a single being? Marcus was quiet for a moment. It started on Earth. The screens around the chamber flickered and showed Earth. From space it looked beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green land. Several ambassadors made quiet sounds of appreciation. It looked peaceful, they thought. It looked safe. Then the data started appearing. Surface temperature range, -80 to +60 degrees Celsius. Active volcanoes, 1,514. Annual natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, wildfires, tsunamis, all occurring simultaneously. Native predators, over 8 million species capable of killing an adult human, disease-causing organisms, hundreds of thousands of known varieties, constantly evolving. This is your home planet? The High Speaker asked. Yes, Marcus said. And your species survived there? We did more than survive, Marcus said. We built cities, we farmed the land, we sailed the oceans, we climbed the mountains, we went into the sky. A Vothian scientist whispered to her colleague. Their planet has been trying to kill them for 4 billion years and they are still there. Her colleague stared at the screen. Not just still there, he whispered. They won. I was born in a city called Detroit, Marcus told the council. At the time, that city had one of the highest rates of violent crime on the planet. I grew up understanding that the world was dangerous. That was not unusual for a human child. Most of us grow up knowing that. At age 9, I survived a building collapse during an earthquake. At age 13, I survived a serious illness that killed 40% of the people in my neighborhood. At age 17, I survived a flood that destroyed the eastern half of my city. He said all of this in the same tone a person might use to describe the weather. Flat, calm, completely ordinary. My first real combat was against the Vreth Raiders. They were attacking a colony ship carrying 12,000 civilians. Our response unit had 9 soldiers. The Raiders had 412 fighters and 3 gunships. A Brakari general made a sharp clicking sound. 9 against 400? And 3 gunships, Marcus added. What did you do? The High Speaker asked. We got between the Raiders and the colony ship. Marcus said simply. Did you retreat? We called for backup. Backup was 4 hours away. The colony ship would have been destroyed in 40 minutes, so we did not wait. The Vreth Raiders sent a distress signal during the battle, Marcus said. What did it say? Director Yuan asked. Marcus looked around the chamber. The signal was 4 words. A moment of silence. The human is still coming. No one laughed. No one made a sound. How many of the 400 raiders survived? A Vothian ambassador asked. Enough to fly 1 ship home, Marcus said. And the 12,000 civilians? All arrived safely. The ship was delayed 6 hours. Some damage to the outer hull, nothing serious. The Vothian scientist spoke again. In every recorded conflict where human forces were outnumbered 5 to 1 or greater, 63 such incidents, humans won 58 of them. And the 5 they lost? The High Speaker asked. The scientist hesitated. They came back, she said. In all 5 cases they reorganized and ultimately won. Average time between initial loss and final victory, 14 months. An old Cathoran general leaned forward. We defeated a human force 3 times in the Outer Rim border disputes. Each time we thought it was finished, each time they came back. The 3rd time, they came back with weapons we had never seen before. He shook his head. We signed a peace agreement. Not because we wanted peace, but because we realized that they were not going to stop. Drakikal slowly raised one clawed hand. I have a question, he said, his voice noticeably quieter now. Ask, Marcus said. Drakikal chose his words carefully. Are you the most dangerous human? Marcus thought about it honestly. No, he said. Drakikal stared. Then who is? Marcus was quiet for just a second. We don't keep that person in a council chamber. That night, thousands of encrypted messages flew between alien embassies. Military advisors were woken in the middle of the night. Old battle reports were being reread with very serious eyes. Ambassador Drakikal sent one message to his government. It was short. It said, "Do not provoke the humans. I will explain when I return." In the corridor outside, Director Ewan walked beside Marcus. That went better than expected, she said. Marcus was quiet. They still don't understand, he said. What don't they understand? Marcus looked straight ahead. That I'm not the one they should be worried about. And somewhere in the cold dark of space, in 30 different star systems, other humans were going about their day, training, building, remembering, and waiting. The high speaker called a 15-minute break after Marcus Cole's last words. 15 minutes turned into 40. Because in those 40 minutes, every ambassador in the chamber was doing the same thing. They were pulling up every piece of information they had on Marcus Cole, and the more they read, the quieter they became. It was the Vothian scientist, researcher A. Levin, who first pulled up the complete military file. She had fast fingers and a faster mind, and within 10 minutes, she had accessed the publicly available records of Commander Marcus Cole through the Galactic Union's shared database. She read the first page, then she read it again. Then she turned to her senior colleague and said in a very flat voice, "I think we made a mistake laughing at the humans." Her colleague leaned over to look at the screen. He did not say anything for a long time. Finally, he said, "How is this one person?" "I have checked 3 times, Isla Ven said. "It is one person." When the council reconvened, the high speaker's voice had a careful, measured quality to it now, like a being who was choosing every word with great precision. "Commander Cole, the council has been reviewing your service record. We would like to go through it together if you have no objection." Marcus nodded. No objection. The record appeared on the main screens for everyone to see. "You joined the Earth Defense Forces at age 19. Correct? You are currently 44 years old. Correct. That means 25 years of active military service. Correct. And in those 25 years, you have participated in 30 separate armed conflicts across 14 different star systems." He paused. 30 wars, he said almost to himself. "They were not all wars," Marcus said. "Some were defense operations, some were rescue missions that became something else. But all 30 involved combat." "Yes." The chamber was very still. 30 conflicts in 25 years meant more than one per year, every year without stopping. For context, the most decorated Cathoran general in history had fought in 11 conflicts over a career of 160 years. No one said this out loud, but several people were clearly thinking it. "The deep space ambush at Relay Station Kova 9, Levin said, highlighting it on screen. "You were 23 years old." "I remember it," Marcus said. "A human resupply convoy of 4 ships was ambushed by 11 Garathi attack vessels. The convoy was carrying medical supplies to a colony suffering from a viral outbreak. 3 of the 4 ships were destroyed in the first 60 seconds. A few ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. You were on the 4th ship, the only one that survived the first attack. The Garathi ships surrounded you and demanded surrender." She looked up from the datapad. "What happened next is where the record becomes unusual." "What happened?" Marcus said calmly. is that we had 12,000 doses of medicine on that ship. A colony of 40,000 people was dying. We were not going to surrender the medicine. You had one ship against 11, Isla Ven said. We had one ship, Marcus agreed. And? Marcus looked at her. We won. The Bracari general stood halfway out of his seat before catching himself. One ship against 11 Garathi attack vessels? Their armor is among the strongest in the outer systems. It is, Marcus agreed. Their armor is excellent on the front and sides. He paused. It is less excellent underneath. Silence. Then the Bracari general said quietly, You went underneath them. The medicine arrived at the colony 2 days later, Marcus said. 39,412 people survived the outbreak. The siege of Rykar Station, Isla Ven said, moving further down the record. This is the engagement most referenced in military databases across 12 species. You were 31 years old. Several ambassadors straightened in their seats. Even Drak Kal, who had been staring at the table, looked up. Rykar Station, 8,600 civilians, 312 human defense personnel. The attacking force, 12,000 soldiers, 17 warships. She stopped reading and just looked at the numbers. 12,000 against 300, a ratio of almost 40 to 1. The Vranok coalition gave the station 6 hours to surrender or they would begin orbital bombardment. That is correct, Marcus said. You were the senior defense commander. I was. What was your response to the surrender demand? Marcus thought for a moment. I sent them a message. What did the message say? Marcus looked at the high speaker steadily. I told them the station would not surrender. I told them that if they began bombardment, they would be starting a war with humanity they would not finish in their lifetimes. And I told them that every hour they waited, more human ships were getting closer. Was that true? Isla Ven asked. Were more ships coming? The nearest human fleet was 19 hours away, Marcus said. A quiet moment passed. So you lied, she said. I gave them something to think about, Marcus said. 7 consecutive ground assaults over 72 hours. All 7 were repelled. 72 hours. The Bracari general said, leaning forward now, fully engaged. 300 soldiers against 12,000. How? We knew the station, Marcus said. Every corridor, every vent shaft, every storage room, every weak point in the outer walls. The Vranok soldiers were stronger than us individually. They were better equipped, but they were fighting in our house. He paused. Nobody fights harder than a person defending their home. By hour 48, we were running low on ammunition. Several sections were on fire. 17 soldiers were wounded and could not fight, but we were still there. And the Vranok? They had lost 900 soldiers in 7 assaults. Their commanders told them it would take 2 hours. It had been 48. Their soldiers were tired. Their commanders were embarrassed. And at hour 72? Marcus looked at the general. The human fleet arrived 11 hours early, he said. They pushed very hard to get there. A pause. The Vranok coalition retreated. And the civilians? 8,419 were alive when the fleet arrived, Marcus said. We lost 104 defense personnel over those 72 hours. He said the number quietly. I remember every one of their names. There was a long silence. Then the old Meath ambassador raised a thin arm slowly. My species has observed this galaxy for 9,000 years, he said. We have watched empires rise. We have watched empires fall. We have watched species that seemed unstoppable eventually stop. He paused. But I have never, in 9,000 years, encountered a species that fights the way humans fight. How do we fight? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Every other species fights for territory, or resources, or pride, or ideology. All of these can be negotiated. He looked directly at Marcus. But humans fight for the people standing next to you. You fight for people depending on you. You fight for people you have never met, just because they are human, that cannot be negotiated away. There is no offer that replaces it. The chamber was completely silent. And that, the Meath ambassador said softly, makes you the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. Not because you are the strongest, not because you have the best weapons, but because you will simply not stop. Drakakal raised his head and looked at Marcus with those yellow eyes. His voice was different now, quieter, more careful, unmistakably honest. "Commander Cole," Drakakal said, "I owe you an apology. I asked you a question as a joke. I intended to humiliate you." He paused. "I understand now that I did not know what I was talking about." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "Ask your question," Marcus said. "Is there anything," Drakakal said carefully, "in this galaxy that actually scares you?" Every eye in the chamber was on Marcus. He was quiet. He looked down at the table for just a moment. Then he looked back up, and for the first time since walking into the Grand Council chamber that day, he smiled. It was a small smile, quiet and calm and completely genuine. And somehow, that smile scared every single being in that room more than anything else Marcus had said or done all day. More than the number, more than the war record, more than the story of Rykar Station, because it was the smile of someone who had thought about that question before, someone who already knew the answer and was not afraid of it. The smile stayed on Marcus Cole's face for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds is not a long time. But in a silent chamber full of 247 alien species, all holding their breath, all staring at one human, 3 seconds felt like a lifetime. Then Marcus spoke, and the galaxy was never quite the same again. "Yes," Marcus said. "There is one thing that scares me." Nobody moved. Ambassador Drakakal sat very still, his yellow eyes fixed on the human commander. The Meath ambassador had his fingers pressed together in front of his face. Researcher Isla Ven had stopped typing entirely. Even the high speaker leaned forward slightly in his seat. "What scares you?" Drakakal asked. Marcus looked around the room slowly, deliberately, meeting the eyes of different ambassadors. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and steady. "Wasting time," he said, "in a room full of people who have already decided we are not worth listening to." The silence that followed was a different kind of silence, not the stunned silence from when he had said the number, not the uncomfortable silence from when the war record was read. This was a thinking silence, a silence where 247 species were all doing the same calculation in their heads, and most of them were arriving at the same uncomfortable answer. Marcus put both hands flat on the table. "I want to be honest with this council," he said, "because honesty is more useful than politics right now. When humans first applied to join the Galactic Union, we were told the process would take 10 years. It took 23. When we asked why, we were told we needed to prove ourselves. So we proved ourselves. We mapped 12 new star systems. We shared medical technology that cured 4 diseases killing millions across 6 species. We opened our borders. We followed every rule. We attended every meeting." He paused. "And then today, in our very first council session as full members, the first thing that happened was someone stood up and said we should not be here." He did not look at Drakakal when he said this. He did not need to. "I am not angry about that," Marcus continued. "I understand why some species see us as small and new. We have not built our reputation here yet." He looked at the chamber. "But I want to be very clear about one thing. Humans do not fight for glory," he said. "We do not fight for territory. We do not fight because we enjoy it. We fight when something we love is being threatened. And when that happens..." His voice stayed calm, but something harder and quieter came into it. "We do not stop." Drakakal was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was completely different from the smooth arrogance he had walked in with. "Commander Cole, I have been an ambassador for 61 years. In that time I have spoken to the leaders of 43 species. I have negotiated treaties. I have ended wars. I have started a few as well, if I am being honest. In 61 years, I have learned to read beings very quickly. I can tell the difference between a species that is dangerous and a species that only wants others to think it is dangerous." He looked at Marcus. "Humans are the first species in 61 years that I genuinely cannot read." Marcus said nothing. I came into this chamber today prepared to dismiss your species, Drakakal said. I was wrong, not because of the number and not because of the war record. Those surprised me, yes. But what changed my mind was something simpler. What was that? The High Speaker asked. Drakakal looked at Marcus. He was not afraid of us, not one moment. Not when we laughed, not when the whole chamber turned against him. He stood there like a being who knew exactly who he was and exactly what he was capable of, and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. He sat back in his chair. I have met warriors. I have met conquerors. I have met leaders who commanded millions. None of them looked the way he looked today. How did he look? Ailaven asked softly. Drakakal thought for a moment. Like someone who had already survived the worst thing that could happen to him, he said, and was not worried about what came next. The High Speaker called for the vote. Director Ewan stood slowly. Humanity does not need the Galactic Union to survive, she said quietly. We survived on a planet that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We survived diseases and disasters and wars with ourselves, and then we looked up at the stars and decided we wanted to be part of something bigger. She looked around the room. We are asking for a seat at this table not because we need your protection, and not because we are afraid of being alone. We are asking because we believe a galaxy of different species working together is stronger than any single species working alone, even us. She sat down. The crystals lit up one by one across the chamber, blue, blue, blue. The Brakari general voted blue. The Vothian ambassadors voted blue. The Meath ambassador voted blue without hesitation. The chamber filled with blue light. Then it was Drakakal's turn. Everyone watched him. He sat still for a long moment, his clawed hand hovering over the crystal. Then he pressed it. Blue. 241 votes in favor, 6 abstentions, 0 against. As the ambassadors filed out, the Brakari general paused next to Marcus. The siege of Rykar Station, he said simply. 72 hours, 300 soldiers. I will be thinking about that for a long time. He walked away without waiting for a response. Drakakal stopped at the door and turned back. Commander Cole. Marcus looked up. The question I asked at the beginning. I asked it because I thought it would be a small number. He was quiet for a moment. It was not a small number. I will not make that mistake again, Drakakal said, and I will make sure my government does not make it either. He turned and walked out. Director Ewan turned to Marcus. 241 to 0, that is the most one-sided membership vote in Council history. I just answered their questions, Marcus said. She shook her head. You made them feel something. Every species in that room left here today thinking the same thing. What thing? Marcus asked. She looked at him. That they are very glad humans are on their side. In the far corner, old historian Voskel was packing his recording equipment. He had recorded the admission of 49 species into the Galactic Union. He had seen more history than almost any living being in the galaxy. His young assistant Sori asked, Is this session going into the Standard Archive, or the Significant Events Archive? Voskel looked at the empty spot where Marcus Cole had stood all day. Get a separate file, he said finally. For what? For everything that comes after today, he said. Because after today, the galaxy has a before and an after, and I want them clearly separated. You really think today was that important? Voskel walked toward the door. In 200 years of recording history, I have seen many species join this council. Most of them walked in hoping the galaxy would accept them. He paused at the door. The humans walked in and waited for the galaxy to catch up. He stepped through the door. There is a difference. That night across the galaxy, things quietly began to change. On the Silurian homeworld, military advisors were called into emergency meetings. On the Brakari military station, the general sat alone writing new training programs based on what 300 humans had done against 12,000. On 17 different planets and space stations, beings from dozens of species quietly looked up information about Earth. And in the human delegation's quarters, Marcus Cole sat alone with a cup of cold coffee and a datapad showing 104 names. The soldiers who had died at Rykar Station. He read through every name, the way he always did at the end of a long day. He did not think about the vote. He did not think about Dracakal's apology. He did not think about the number or the silence that had followed. He thought about the names because that was what humans did. They remembered, and they did not stop.